Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the very first Nutrients for Life Earth Day virtual field trip events. We are so excited to have you with us today. And today we are going to be visiting some farms located in Virginia, Iowa, and Kansas. You'll also have the opportunity to ask questions. So please write in the Zoom Q&A and don't forget to share your name and where you're from. Hey, did you know that the very first Earth Day was celebrated in 1970? That means we've been celebrating Earth Day for more than 50 years. Well, in agriculture, we truly believe that every day is Earth Day. After all, farmers are one of the original first stewards of the land. I myself am a farmer's daughter, and the traditions, values, and the land we carry on from generation to generation. Today, we're going to be talking about why the land is so important and how it helps nourish the world. Let's take a look at exactly how much farmland we have in the world. Well, I want you all to pretend that this apple is the earth. And we all know that the earth is primarily made up of water, right? It's about 70 to 75% water. And we know that we're not growing our crops in the water. So that leaves about 1/4 or 25% land. Now, do you guys think that just because we have that much land that we can grow our crops on it? No, there's certain parts of the world where we can't grow crops. When you take that into account, places like the deserts, mountains, and the Arctic, urban areas. And sure, we might have some indoor gardening and some rooftop gardenings, but we're not having major large scale production. Swampy areas and areas where the soil is just too poor to grow food. When you take that all into effect, all you have left is this tiny little sliver of land. And this tiny little sliver of land represents just 3% of the Earth's surface, which is why it's so very important that we take care of what we have. And speaking of taking care of the land, let's introduce our first farmer, Harriet Wegmire. Welcome, Harriet. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Haley. I'm doing good, thank you.
So good to see you. Well, I want to just jump right in. And as a farmer, I want to ask you, what does Earth Day mean to you? We're celebrating the 51st Earth Day. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, so Earth Day is definitely a celebration of all that our Earth offers. And for us, for me as a farmer, that's where I grow my food. I grow strawberries and pumpkins and kind of celebrate it every single day. Taking care of the Earth is something that we do every single day.
Absolutely, I could see that. And you mentioned you're growing pumpkins and strawberries, and that kind of leads me to my first question that was submitted by a student. We had Shanita in Louisiana ask, who helps you with your job, or do you have to do everything by yourself?
Yeah, if I had to do everything myself, I wouldn't get it done. That's for sure. So first, we're a family farm, so that means that all members of my family help in all the activities, and that includes my 3 children. So I know that there might be some 4th graders on this call today, and we had my 4th grader out in the field until 10 o'clock last night putting row covers on to protect the strawberry plants against frost. So we definitely have family is first and foremost in helping on the farm, but then we do have hired folks starting at age 14, so high school, college, and then some adults as well.
Very fun. And that's fun to get the whole family involved. I'm sure you're making traditions that will carry on from year to year. We had another question come in from Paula in Ohio, and she asked, what's your favorite crop to grow? You mentioned you grow pumpkins and strawberries, and I believe some other things. So what's your very favorite crop to grow?
Yeah, so I'm a pumpkin farmer first and foremost. I love to eat strawberries and grow them, but pumpkins are my favorite. I love all the varieties. My favorite variety is the Cinderella pumpkin. For anybody who might know that fairy tale, there is a Cinderella pumpkin. Just the fall colors, the variety, the decor, as well as cooking. I cook with pumpkins and make some great like pumpkin stew and soup and things like that, and bread, of course.
Well, that all sounds delicious. And because you're a farmer, and I know farmers can never technically depend on the weather because it changes ever so often. For example, I'm here in Illinois, and who would have thought that we would have had snow like we had this week? We pre recorded some videos to get a glimpse at your farm and introduce your land and what you grow. So why don't we go ahead and play that, and then we'll meet back here for live Q&A. So students, if you have questions, please feel free to write them in the Q&A option here on Zoom, and we'll do our best to try to answer some of those.
Hi, welcome to Virginia. I am Harriet Wegmire, and I am a strawberry and pumpkin farmer here in the great state of Virginia. I farm with my husband Tyler. We also grow corn and soybeans, but right now strawberries is what we have growing, so that's what we're going to talk about. So we are 50 miles outside of Washington, D.C. to the northwest. In addition to farming, I am also the executive director of the Nutrients for Life Foundation. So each and every day I see how valuable nutrients are to all the plants on our farm. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all about my strawberry plants. So here on our farm, we farm about 200 acres. So what is an acre? An acre seems like a really big place, but we might compare it to a football field. So do you know how big a football field is? So that's just about the size of an acre. So we might say that we farm 200 football fields. So I mentioned that we grow about the 10 acres of strawberries, and then the rest of that is about 75 acres of pumpkins, and then the rest is evenly split between soybeans and corn. People come out to our farm to pick their very own strawberries, and in the fall they come out to the farm to pick pumpkins. So you might have done that at a farm near you. Our corn and our soybeans are actually used more as in crop rotation. So when we grow pumpkins, we can't grow them on the same soil year after year because we can get some disease pressure in that soil. So we rotate them every 3 years. The pumpkins come back to the same amount of same land. So our corn and our soybeans is used for crop rotation, and of course we harvest that, and that can be used in cattle feed. Actually, crayons. Soybeans are used to make crayons that you may use in school. So in Virginia, our strawberries become ripe somewhere around May 1st. So you can see we have lots of blossoms, but no red berries, no white berries yet. And it all depends on the weather. So weather is super important. You know, when you wake up in the morning, if it's raining, you have to wear a raincoat. If it's really cold, you have to wear your winter coat to go to school. So we watch the weather really closely with the strawberries too, because we think we're going to be ready about May 1st. But if we have really, really cold nights, we may not have ripe strawberries until May 20th. So there could be a big change in difference of when we have ripe strawberries because of the weather. This also explains why if you live in Michigan, you're not going to have strawberries until sometime, June, July. July 4th would be a good time for strawberries in northern Michigan, just because the climate and the weather matters so much. Like in North Carolina now is when they have strawberries. So again, as we live in different parts of the country, our crops become ripe at different times, and it's all related to the weather. So one thing that's really important for strawberry farmers to be aware of is it gonna freeze at night? So what does freezing mean? 32 degrees is when things freeze, and frost. So if these little strawberry blossoms, the little white blossoms, if they get frost on them, they will die and we won't have any strawberries. So one thing that we do is we put blankets on them. So this right here is a row cover. We call it a row cover, And it's like a blanket, just like you might use when you are cold at night. These covers go right over the plants, and we use something called a rock bag to hold these covers down. So we will cover the entire field every night if there is a chance of frost, because again, if it freezes, all of our strawberries, all the blossoms that are out here, they won't make it. So row covers are really important. Just like we want you to be comfortable at night when you sleep, we certainly want our little strawberries to be comfortable. Right now, the plants have little white flowers on them. This little flower will become the strawberry in just 30 days. First, the petals drop off, and then the strawberry goes from yellow to green to white and finally to red and gets bigger and bigger. How does this happen? Well, it takes a lot of sunlight, which we love, water, and nutrients. So how does the plant get all of these things? Well, first, on this strawberry field, this is called a raised bed. So from where my foot is to where the plants are, there's about 10 inches of difference. So all of the plants have this plastic bed wrapped around and tucked underneath the soil. So it's called a raised bed, and that's how all the strawberries are grown here. So why do we have the raised bed? First of all, it keeps the weeds out. I don't know about you, but weeding, this would take me a really long time to weed this field. So the black plastic keeps all the weeds out, or the majority of the weeds. But the really important thing about this plastic bed is what happens right over here. This line runs all the way down the center of the row, and when I turn it on, it gives water and nutrients. So the special thing that happens underneath every single bed is called fertigation. So fertigation is where water and crop nutrients are fed right to the roots. So every one of these strawberry plants has roots underneath, and they will get fed water, so they'll have plenty to drink, and their plant food goes right to the roots. So right on the end of every row, we call this a main line for irrigation, and then there's a little line, and all we have to do is turn this nozzle on, but I'm not going to do that right now, but we would turn it on and the water would just flow right into the bed. So again, it's fertigation that brings the water and the crop nutrients or plant food that makes these plants healthy, and that of course combines with the sunshine, which makes for a very happy strawberry plant. There are over 25,000 strawberry plants just in this one field. So we fertigate the plants about every other day to make sure the plants get what they need to grow. Each strawberry plant carries about 25 to 100 strawberries. That's a lot to ask of a little plant. Again, the water, sunlight, and nutrients are so important. So again, if we look at this plant here, there are so many little strawberries or little blossoms that are going to become little strawberries. So we definitely have to make sure we get the nutrients and the water, and for certain the sun, for these plants to produce that many strawberries.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think that's fascinating to see. And I don't think I've ever seen so many strawberry plants in one place. I myself have never actually been to a strawberry field, and I think I'm going to have to make that my to-do list for this spring and summer. So Harriet, thank you so much for giving us a glimpse of your farm. It was absolutely fascinating. And I want to start off with a question from a first grader named Calvin. He wants to know, how do you plant so many plants, and are there machines that help you plant?
Kelvin, that is a great question. So we plant the strawberry plants in September. So when you're starting up your new school year, we're busy out in the field. They're planted, they're called plugs. So they're little baby plants with good roots on them. And it's a combination of people, manual labor, and a tractor. So we use a tractor in creeper mode, which is slow. It's as slow as a tractor can possibly go. Very, very slow. There's something on the back called a water wheel planter, which has a big tank of water. So the water comes down. There's a wheel that has spikes in it that are at about 14 inches apart. And the spike will come down into the bed of the strawberry row, poke a hole. The water shoots through where the spike is. So there's water that immediately goes into the hole. And then there's a person, a lot of times it's me. Sometimes I'm driving the tractor. Sometimes I'm planting the strawberry plants. And then I'll take the plug, the strawberry plant, and then put it in the hole. And it takes us about 4.5 days of doing nothing else but planting strawberry plants to get all of our fields planted.
That sounds like quite a bit of work. And speaking of work, we had another question related to that. Clara asked, do you have to turn on one hose at a time, or are those hoses all connected?
So they are all connected. We do them in zones. So if we turned them on all at the same time, we probably wouldn't have enough pressure to get water to each, like all the way down each of the rows. So it's there's just little pinholes in each of the lines that run down the row. So it's just a little bit of water at a time, but we need enough pressure to get the water pushed all the way out. So we have, in each of our fields, we have anywhere between 4 and 10 zones. And yes, we do have to turn the knobs in those zones on. So they're not all individual, but each zone has maybe 12 little lines, and they all have to be turned on.
Interesting. Now you said it's bringing water, and I know in the video it said water and nutrients. So are there fertilizers in there as well? And is that a liquid fertilizer? We had a question coming in about if it's liquid or dry fertilizers from Terry. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the plants are in the field and they're growing like that, it's all water. It's called water soluble fertilizer. So it's fertilizer that is dissolved in the water. So that's how it goes right to the roots. We do usually we do our soil testing in June, July, because if you were to come to our farm in June, July, that field would just be dirt. Like you would just see soil, tilled up soil. No beds, and that's when we can put any nutrient amendments or lime to affect the pH directly to the soil. But when the plants are growing, it absolutely has to be water soluble fertilizer that goes right to the root source.
Interesting. So speaking of nutrients and soil, we had Catherine from North Carolina ask, how important is the type of soil you use to plant your crops? Because they're currently discussing types of soil and the best for providing the nutrients for their plants in their class.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that where we live in Virginia, we have 3 different field locations, which are about 12 miles apart, and we have 3 different soil types. So I think everywhere we live, we have pros and cons with our soil. One of our fields is a red clay soil. Red clay or any type of clay, has very poor drainage, and that's not ideal. Not ideal, but we still are successful in growing a fantastic strawberry crop. So we have one of our other fields has really great drainage, and it's a little bit more of a loamy type soil, and that is really fantastic. The best soil for strawberries for that type of crop is really like sandy, like really good drainage, so the water doesn't hold there, and the roots just sit in water. They want to have access to water, but they don't want to just be sitting in it. So the great thing about growing any type of crop is that you can't do it anywhere, but in most places, strawberries are grown all across this country, and we all have different types of soil. So the ideal why there's so many strawberries grown in Florida is probably they've got great drainage, great soil for growing strawberries, but we can certainly do it in all other states.
Well, they also have great weather all year long, whereas where you're at, you get that cold weather. And as you showed in the video, you have to sometimes cover those up with those blankets. But we did have a question from Natalia in 5th grade, and she asked, well, what happens if the plant gets too hot?
That is a fantastic question. Yeah, so we like to, if we could just be 75 degrees every day, our strawberry plants would be the happiest plants ever. So we do get, when it gets to be 90 degrees for a couple of days in a row, so 3 to 5 days in a row, it's too much for the plant and it shuts down fruit production. So we can have a season, depending on the weather, we have 8 weeks of ripe strawberries ready to pick, or we can have the shortest season we've ever had is 3 weeks because it goes from cold to hot real fast. And once it gets too hot, the plants will no longer produce strawberries. It's just too much for them, too much energy.
And that's never fun because I bet you enjoy your strawberries on your farm. I know I would love strawberries are one of my favorite fruits and one of my children's, they're my children's favorite fruit too. So let me ask you, what is your favorite thing to make or how to eat your strawberries?
Probably my favorite way to eat a strawberry is in the field. If I am standing in the field and I've just picked a strawberry, it's a little bit warm and it tastes amazing. We definitely have a lot of things that we make with strawberries in our house. And of course, strawberry shortcake and ice cream is right up there, as well as a special strawberry truffle that's just tops in my house with my kids.
Well, that sounds delicious. And I know I'm putting strawberry picking on my to-do list for this spring and summer. Harriet, thank you so much for joining us today. We're actually going to travel over to Iowa next. But before that, I have a fun fact for all of you. Did you guys know that a strawberry plant has about 200 seeds on it? It's the only fruit that wears the seeds on the outside. Next, like I said, we're headed into Iowa to Deborah Kearney's farm, and she's about 982 miles away from Harriet. So thank you so much for joining us, Deborah. You guys are located in Knoxville, Iowa, and I see that you have your dad there. Hello, Dan. Thanks for joining us. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself? And it looks like you're kind of in a fun location. So where are you at?
Well, we're in Iowa and we're in a cornfield, so that couldn't be any better.
Well, as an Illinois girl, I might argue that.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So what are you doing in that tractor?
We actually planting some corn, field corn.
You're doing field corn. So that brings up a good question that we had come through. Someone asked, are there different types of corn, and what are those?
Well, there's field corn, sweet corn, Indian corn,
Popcorn.
and popcorn. We raise sweet corn and regular corn, field corn.
I love that. So you're currently doing field corn. Do you normally plant your field corn before your sweet corn?
I know I planted sweet corn March 22nd.
Oh, so that gets in the field early.
Yeah, the first I planted. We plant every week.
I have a question for all of you. It is Earth Day. We're celebrating the 51st Earth Day. And I wanted to ask each one of our farmers that joined us today, as a farmer, what does Earth Day mean to you?
Every day is Earth Day for us. We take care of the earth all the time. Without it, we have no income. We have no livelihood. So we try to take care of it. But Earth Day, I think it's a great thing to celebrate for the simple fact that it makes other people aware of how important the earth is, and specifically for us, the soil. So,
and being that you have your daughter there with you, I think that's one of the things farmers always think about. It tends to be passed down from generation to generation and providing for the future. So I love that. So, well, thanks for joining us in the tractor. And I know we also have a prepared video from you guys showing off your farm and what you grow a little bit. So why don't we go ahead and play that? And then join us again for some live Q&A after. So students, make sure you continue to ask those fantastic questions. We have lots coming in. We have about 200 classrooms on with us today, and we can't get to all the questions, but we are enjoying seeing them come in, and maybe we'll pick yours. So let's take a look at Deborah and Dan's farm.
And welcome to Iowa. I'm Deborah, and I'm here with my dad, Dan Dennison, with Dandy Farms. And we're standing on his farm. He's getting ready to plant. The planter's behind us. But let's start, Dad. Do you want to just tell a little bit about you and your farm?
I've been farming most of my life, and our farm's between the crops and hay and pasture, 500 acres or so, which would be, as we talked before, it's like 500 football fields.
So what do you raise as far as crops on your farm?
We raise soybeans, 2 different kinds of corn, field corn and sweet corn, alfalfa, and then we have some pumpkins, some other things. But
and I know that last week you have a field right next to my house, and I saw the trucks out there last week, and they were applying something. What were they putting on the field?
We were putting on fertilizer, but on 2 different ways. Some was in a dry form, and some was liquid. It's an anhydrous, they call it, but it's a nitrogen source. And put that on before we start planting.
It's important to understand that plants are all different. So soybeans need something different than corn needs, and your sweet corn is kind of a whole different crop from field corn, just because its season is a little different. And so we know as farmers that it takes a lot of information and being prepared going into the season to make sure that your plants produce a good crop.
Let's head with Dan over to his field, where he has some visitors there helping him prepare for his planting season.
Hi, Colonel. I'm just checking my soil analysis from my field, see if I need some nitrogen for my sweet corn. I think I do need nitrogen, it looks like. I think I'm supposed to wait here.
Are you Dandy?
Yes, I am.
Woo! Mr. Colonel, he sent me out here, said you needed some nitrogen. I'm Mr. N. Oh boy, do you need a little nitrogen. Actually, you need quite a bit. I can help you. Ready? I'll take care of it. Out to the field I go. I think I got you covered. Oh, looks like you might need more help. Let me get a friend. Wait here. Well, are you Dandy?
Yes, I am.
Well, I am Mrs. P. And Mr. N sent me. He said you might need my service. Oh, heavens. You just need a little more P. But you do need some more phosphorus. Because phosphorus really helps your plants grow. Well, I can help you with that. Here I go. Dandy, is it you?
Yes.
Oh, I've been looking everywhere. I got lost. Sorry I took so long.
It's okay.
Well, Mrs. P sent me. What is it? What is it you need here?
I think I need a little bit of potassium.
Oh, potassium. Oh,
Yeah.
you don't need much, just a little. That'd really help in your field though, just a little
Oh, I can take care of that. Just give me a minute.
Thank you. Is that enough?
Well, Dan, I think we got you covered. I think we got enough. Yeah.
I should have.
Yep, that was enough. I
should
think
have,
you're good.
I should have a great crop of corn.
I think you'll have a great crop of corn. Mr. N was here and Mrs. P. I think you're covered.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. You have a great day.
You too. Hi, Colonel. Hey, I just wanted to stop and thank you for helping me get all the nutrients I needed for my crop. I think I'm going to have a great crop of corn now. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Mr. N, Mrs. P, and Miss K for coming to help Dan prepare for the planting season. Let's go back to Dan's farm and hear more about his sweet corn.
So I know every morning when I call you, almost every day you're out checking the progress of the sweet corn to see if it's up yet. Because when you plant this early, it's kind of a risk. As far as the weather, if it stays warm enough, if it gets too cold, if the ground doesn't get warm enough, the seed can rot. And so that early planting for the sweet corn's a risk, but you're hoping it grows so that you can have corn the beginning of July, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And how often do you plant sweet corn?
I try to plant it once a week, and early I'll plant 2 or 3 different varieties of different lengths of maturity, and then later on I just plant, full season.
So the sweet corn you're planting about once a week, every week until?
Really, I plant until I start picking, but around the 4th of July.
And the field corn, you just plant once. So you're going to probably plant maybe even this week, and you'll probably get all the field corn in at one time or close to one time.
Yeah, we'll try to get the corn in, then as soon as we're done, we'll start on the soybeans. Yeah.
Well, I think if I looked last, you have some sweet corn that may be up. So maybe we can run over there real quick and look at what it looks like just coming out of the ground.
If it's not froze off.
If it's not frozen, okay. Well, we've moved over to the sweet corn patch, and from there it doesn't look like much is going on, but just starting to come through the ground are some plants. And so we dug this one up, and I'll remove some of the soil here, and you can see it has starting to get a nice root system. You can still see the seed there, but the plant here, one, it's a little burnt and it's a little yellow. What's going on with this plant? Do you think it's gonna make it?
I think it's gonna make it. It's cold, extremely cold weather. It's only 27 last night. I'm surprised it's not completely frozen off.
So you were telling me yesterday that the plants looked a little yellow because of the cold, but there was a reason for that.
Well, it could be because it's not getting the nitrogen yet. It's not growing fast enough to get down where the nitrogen is. And sometimes you can lose nitrogen when it's cold. But I think it's just that it's just not down to the nitrogen.
The soil's just not warm enough for it yet.
It needs warm.
So we're hoping for a lot of sunshine and warm weather over the next week to help perk these plants up. But we do have some nice sweet corn plants growing, and probably in a week you'll look out here and see a lot of green.
Hope so.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for coming to visit us here in Iowa today, and we hope you have a great Earth Day.
Well, welcome back, and thank you for showing us your farm. You answered some of the students' questions. We had quite a few students ask you if you only grew corn. We had Lucas from Missouri, and there was a Bailey that asked that, and I believe Edith asked that. And so you guys grow corn, you grow soybeans. Is there anything else that you grow?
Well, sweet corn and alfalfa raise alfalfa for feed our cows hay. We do some pumpkins, but not like Virginia.
Not as many as Harriet and Virginia.
Okay. But those are probably fun to grow. There was a question that came through as a farmer from Mrs. Armstrong's 3rd grade class. What is the hardest job and what is your favorite job on the farm?
Oh boy, I would say maybe the favorite thing is going out and finding a new baby calf. But eating the first sweet corn is pretty special too.
I bet.
Worst job? I don't know that I have any bad jobs. Yes, I'm kind of privileged. I get to do everything I like.
Well, speaking of that, there was a question that came through from, I believe, Layla, and they wanted to know why you became a farmer.
Why you became a farmer?
My parents were farmers, and most of my parents' family was, and I just always wanted to be a farmer. So I had just experience, I guess.
And it takes a lot of it to know everything, because I know farmers wear many hats. They everything from driving the planters and doing the harvest, but you're kind of a mechanic. At times you deal with animals, and so you have to know a lot about a lot, right? So moving on, I want to ask you a question regarding your soil. So you had some visitors in your video, and those visitors went all over your farm, and we know that's not how it happens in real life. So can you guys expand a little bit on your Mr. N, Ms. P, and Mrs. K video, and why those are needed, and what those are, and what they do for the plant?
Yeah, so our plants need different nutrients or foods to be healthy and to produce a crop. And three of the things they need are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Nitrogen helps the plant grow green and healthy. Phosphorus helps your plant grow healthy roots. And potassium helps protect your plant from getting sick or getting diseases. So in order for the plant to grow healthy, we have to make sure that there's enough of those nutrients or foods in the soil for our plant. And so in the video, we were talking about adding those nutrients or supplementing those nutrients as fertilizers if there aren't enough nutrients already in the soil for that particular crop.
So basically, every one of those nutrients has a job, and it's kind of like food for the plant, right?
That's
And
exactly.
so we
Yep.
might relate it to how the nutrients our body needs. Everyone has a job, like calcium for strong bones, so that helps the plant grow. And speaking of growing plants, we know you grow a lot of corn, both field corn and sweet corn. There was Autumn, who wants to know if your corn is sent all over the United States, or where does your corn go?
It's a good question, and I can't really answer it. I sell to larger co-ops or processing plants, and so most of it we truck within a 50-mile radius of our farm, and from there it's shipped to, I'm not sure, I won't know where each load goes, but yes, it's food for the world.
And what about the sweet corn? Is that something that you send off too, or where does all that yummy sweet corn go?
I sell almost all that locally. I do several grocery stores, or deliver directly to the stores, and then we have a roadside stand that sells most of it.
Okay, we had a question from Xander, who asked a question about soil. They wanted to know, what kind of soil does the corn need? What kind of?
Well, around here it's you don't want clay, but you can have some clay. You just need a good textured soil. It's got a little organic material in it. The better it is, the better it produces for you.
And we know you're like us. I'm in Illinois, you're in Iowa. We are fortunate that we have some of the best soil here in the Midwest for growing corn, and part of that corn belt. We had a good question from a third grader in Illinois named Griffin. He wants to know, do you always use machines or combines, or do you ever do any of the planting by hand? So similar to the question for Harriet with all those strawberries, how do you guys plant all that corn?
And we plant it all with machine planters, tractor planters.
So a tractor and planter that puts it in, and then how do you get it out of the field?
Like a combine, the big combines harvest it for us.
So the sweet corn is all picked by hand. So we pick the sweet corn fresh every morning. So we pick every day. And anything we pick that day will be sold that day. So we hire high school students to come and work for us. And about 6 to 8 kids come every morning and pick all the sweet corn by hand. So they'll pick 600 dozen on average a day, each morning. So that is picked by hand. We do plant most of our pumpkins by hand, just to be a little bit more precise. And we also harvest all that by hand.
That sounds like a lot of work and a lot of corn. Speaking of corn, Emma in 3rd grade wants to know, how many days does it take for the corn to grow?
The field corn, we try to plant it in now till the middle of May, and we'll try to harvest that late September, early October. Usually it's like 110-day corn, 108-day corn, but that's how many days the corn takes to mature is based on heat units. And so if you get a hot summer, you might have a day and a half of heat units in a day, that kind of thing. So, but from the time it comes up, roughly 100 days, I guess. Sweet corn is much shorter.
So this kind of goes along with that question. So how long does it take to grow? But then Bailey asked, how do you know when your plants are ready? And I know that you do both corn and sweet corn. So how can you tell when they're ready? Is it based on the days, or are there other ways that you know it's ready to go?
The field corn, when it's ready to go, basically you can feel it, but you take it and test it, and you want it to get fairly dry before you harvest, so it doesn't cost you so much to dry it, and it'll store much better. Sweet corn is pretty much, when the silks get brown, you start washing it, and as soon as it looks good, you taste it. Usually my granddaughters will eat it a week before it's ready, and so we test it about every day.
So how we tell the sweet corn is ready is we just eat it every day until it's
raw.
Perfect. And my kids will go out in the field, they eat it raw, straight out off the plant, and they decide when it's optimal for sales. So that's how we test it.
Like a fun chore, if you can call that a chore, to figure that out. I think I might sign up for that. Well, I want to say thank you guys so much for joining us today and introducing us to your farm. If we have time at the end, we'll do a little bit more live Q&A after our next visit to a farmer. Here's my fun fact on corn, though. Did you guys know there's about 800 kernels on an ear of corn? And here's a math fact for you, if you want to do it after. Deborah had mentioned they pick about 600 dozen ears of corn a day. So if there are 800 kernels of ear on a ear of corn, how many kernels would that be? So 600 dozen a day, and if there's 800 kernels on each cob, how many kernels would you end up with? Well, next we're going to be traveling to Kansas, and something fun happened at our next farm today. And so we have Melissa and Stephen with us. You guys, welcome. Thank you for being with us here this afternoon, and it looks mighty windy where you are.
We are about to blow away here in Kansas, but thanks for having us. We're excited to have you all join us in Kansas. So we had something fun happen this morning before our first field trip that I want to share with you. We had a brand new baby calf, and the field trip this morning, you can see he's got a little ear tag. They chose the name Buddy for him. So he was just born at about 10 o'clock this morning, and so we wanted to share him with all of you.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm sure the students love that, and I know Buddy had a little bit of a rough entrance into the world today. Stephen had to help him out, and so it just shows that farmers are always out there caring for their animals. And speaking of caring for their animals, we did have one question come through that said, how do you go on vacation if you have animals? So do you ever get to go on a vacation?
This time of year, it's pretty tough to get away, but we do have family and some employees that will allow us from time to time to get away. And but this time of year with calving and things, we stick pretty close to the cows to make sure we don't have any problems, and make sure the cows and baby calves are all doing good. So we do get away, but just not this time of year.
Well, thank you for sharing, and thanks for sharing that newborn calf. That's always, I'm sure, a fun part of being a farmer. Why don't you guys get some shelter, and we are going to watch the video on your farm and find out a little bit about Melissa and Steve and Biggie's farm. So here's their video.
I'm Steve and Biggie.
And I'm Melissa.
Welcome to our farm in north central Kansas. We are halfway between Kansas City and Denver, Colorado.
Let's go take a look at our farm.
Spring is one of our favorite times of year around here. Not only is the weather warming up and everything is starting to get green and come to life after a long winter, but it is also the time when our cows have their baby calves. It's so much fun to see the calves running around everywhere and playing. They're just so cute.
Not only do we have a lot of calves in the spring, but this field of wheat that we're in is also starting to grow. Not too long ago, it was little tiny seeds that were planted in the ground.
We will plant wheat in the fall. It'll sprout and begin to grow. Then during the winter, it goes dormant. And about this time of the year, it'll start to grow again. And our plan is we will harvest this for grain sometime the end of June, first part of July.
What is wheat, though? It's actually pretty cool. After it's harvested, the wheat is taken to a mill where it's ground into flour. That's the same kind of flour that you use to make breads and cakes and cookies and other yummy things like that.
Now that you've heard all about the wheat that we plant, there's a few other things. One of those that we plant every spring is soybeans. Soybeans have a lot of different uses, but a couple of them are this soy candle or these soy crayons. Some of the other crops that we plant in the spring are field corn and sorghum. Those make great animal feed. Now that you've heard all about wheat, corn, sorghum, soybeans, and strawberries, what do they all have in common? They all need healthy soil. But what does that mean? Farmer Dan mentioned earlier that every year he tests his soil. Let's take a look at what that means.
During a soil test, we'll use what we call a soil probe. This is an 8-inch soil probe, and I'll show you here how it simply works. You clean off a spot on the ground. You don't want any vegetation or anything in the soil sample. So we got a clean spot. We'll put our foot on. We'll push the soil probe into the ground. We pull it out, and then we have our 8-inch topsoil sample. We take this sample and we'll put it in a bucket here, and then we'll mix this with random samples from across the field, and we send that off to our laboratory, and they run a soil nutrient test on it, and that will tell us what nutrients are available in our soil. And then we use that information in cooperation with our agronomist, who is kind of like our crop doctor, helps us keep the crops healthy and growing. And we'll make a prescription for this field. Like this field here, we'll take soil samples, we'll send them in, and then on this we'll grow cow feed, which is feed that we'll use to feed the cattle during the winter. And so we'll set up a specific prescription for what fertilizers and things we need to use on the ground to raise the cow feed that we need for feeding our livestock.
After we take our soil samples and send them to the lab, we get this report back. This soil analysis is kind of like a diagnosis showing us the amount of nutrients that are available in our soil, testing for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and other macronutrients. We then work with our agronomist or our plant doctor to come up with what nutrients need to be applied to our soil. This is kind of like a prescription to make sure our soil has what it needs to be healthy. We then use a big sprayer to apply our fertilizer, making sure we apply the right kind at the right place, using the right rate and the right source of nutrients to grow healthy, nutritious crops.
Well, thank you for coming back on and answering some questions. That was a great overview of your farm. And I love learning about soil testing and how that's done and how important that is. And we can talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but we've had several questions come through. And as you might imagine, there have been several based around that baby calf. And so the first one that I want to ask is from Nairi. She asked, how many cows do you have?
We have approximately 225 spring calving cows, which when I say spring calving cow, we start calving about the 20th of March, and then we'll have baby calves through probably mid-May. And we'll have calves between the 20th of March and the middle of May.
And then Mrs. Armstrong's class, there was a girl named by Aubrey. She wanted to know if all of your animals have a name.
Some of our animals do have names. How we identify our cows is we have a numbering system that we use. So every cow does have a unique number. Numbers are just easier to track than names. The cow this morning that calved, for example, her number is 3055. She's had that number since she was a baby calf, and that's how we identify her in our records and how we can keep track of her health and her time in the cow herd.
Yep. So it's easier to track, and then that would be coming up with a lot of names if you had to do that. You can only have one of these names, so that is definitely understandable. But it also brings up another good point of the types of cattle that you have. So I knew I grew up with some cattle as well, and so Mr. Freeman's class in Bloomington asked, how old do cows have to be processed or milked? So do you want to maybe explain that not all cows are milked and what type you have?
Our cattle that we run are what they call beef cattle. Their primary purpose is to raise animals for meat. There are dairy operations that have breeds of cattle that are bred to produce milk. And that's where your milk that you drink with your meals and stuff comes from, or dairy. Our cattle here are bred to utilize range grasslands out here in the central United States to process that into beef that you have when you have hamburgers and things that way. So there's two different types of cattle, just like sweet corn and field corn. There's dairy cattle, and then there's beef cattle that are used for meat production.
Well, thanks so much for sharing about your cattle operation. Let's move back to that plant side and the soil science of it. We had Riot from Mr. Loy's class in Donovan, Illinois, want to know what exactly is sorghum. You had mentioned sorghum in the video, and there's not a lot of sorghum in Illinois. So can you maybe expand on what that is and what it's used for?
Sorghum is a crop that originally originated in Africa. So it is very drought tolerant. Here in our part of the state of Kansas, we don't have any irrigation, so we're strictly what they call dry land. We need rain, naturally occurring rain. We don't have groundwater that we can water with. So sorghum is very drought tolerant. Just like field corn, it's used as a feed for livestock. However, it is becoming popular. It's a gluten-free food. So for individuals that have gluten intolerancy issues and can't have, say, wheat flour, they can use a sorghum flour to make breads and cookies and things that way. So it is used some for human consumption, just like sweet corn is with, but it's primarily used for livestock feeding and ethanol production. And it's just a good crop out here that'll grow in our low rainfall environment.
Well, that's really interesting. I had no idea that it had that many uses. We did get asked about the soil testing that you do, and Karen from Georgia wanted to know, how often do you test your soil to make sure you're adding the needed nutrients and not over fertilizing? So how do you know exactly what to put on?
We soil test every year. We try to soil test every year, the first part of February. Different times of the year, you can get different results on soil tests based on microbial activity and just some of the natural enzymes and things that are in the soil. So to get a benchmark, so we know where we're at, we test every year, sometime between the 15th of January and 15th of February. We pull soil samples. That way we have a good benchmark of where we're at from year to year. We do track what fertilizers we put on, and then we track what crops we take off. And that'll give us a pretty good idea before we run the test what our results are going to be. But the test gives us the final information we need to know, so that we can make the right prescriptions and put on the right amount of nutrients for the crops.
That's really interesting. So all that testing that goes into it, it's almost like, getting prescribed a certain vitamin mixture or for a certain medication mixture for us as humans, and we need all of that to grow healthy as well. So it's analyzed, it's looked at by our soil doctor or an agronomist, as you might say, and then you know exactly what to apply and when to apply it and things like that. I really love learning about that science that goes into it. Well, we are just about out of time, and I want to bring all of our panelists back in for a final goodbye. The opportunity to do something a little bit fun. So the last class got to name Buddy because he was literally born just a few minutes before the morning virtual field trip. And so we thought it might be fun to let you guys name Melissa and Steven's next calf. And maybe we'll give you guys an update on our social media. So teachers, if you want to check into the Nutrients for Life Twitter and Facebook page, we will give an update on when that calf is born and put a picture there. And I'm going to go ahead and launch that polling, and you guys can vote on what their next calf should be. So I'm going to launch the polling. The three names that you have the choice are Speedy, Lucky, and I chose Nelson after Gaylord Nelson, who is the founder of Earth Day. So go ahead and get your votes in. My fun fact for Melissa's segment was that she had mentioned wheat. And so I wanted you guys to know an average semi-load. So think of a semi that you see on the road. An average semi-load of wheat can make around 42,000 loaves of bread. Now that's a lot of bread. We have Melissa and Stephen here. We have Harriet. I don't know if Deborah and Dan are going to be able to join us again. Oh, here they come on. I just wanted to give you guys a moment to say goodbye before we sign off. Harriet, since you went first on the segment, feel free to share any thoughts or final goodbyes.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and happy Earth Day. And I just want to say to all the students out there listening, any one of you can grow up and be in agriculture or be a farmer. I wasn't born into a strawberry farming family. It's something, that I wanted to do when I became an adult. So who knows? There's lots of opportunities in agriculture out there that celebrate Earth Day every single day. So thank you.
That's right. And even beyond the farmer, there's so many jobs that relate to agriculture. In the United States, there's about 1 in 11 jobs that relate to agriculture. And if you're in a high production state of ag, probably more. I know here in Illinois, it's 1 in 4. And it's everything from the farmer in the field to that graphic designer that designed the product that you buy in the store. So there's tons of jobs that go into making our food possible. And there's something out there pretty much for everyone. Deborah, do you want to go ahead and share any final thoughts and final goodbyes?
Yeah, we Dad just finished the field of corn, and we thought we'd send you off with one more fun fact. So do you want to tell us how many seeds you planted per acre?
I planted about 33,000 seeds on this field per acre.
Per acre.
Wow. That is a lot of seeds. And how many acres do you guys have? How many of those football fields?
We have about 500. We farm about 500 acres.
So there you guys go. There's another math quiz for you. How many seeds would that be? And Melissa, what was that?
I said, yeah, if every acre was corn, yeah, it'd be a lot of seeds.
That would be a lot of seeds. Melissa and Stephen, any final goodbyes? And make sure you get that poll in.
We'd just like to say happy Earth Day, and we hope you enjoyed visiting Virginia, Iowa, and Kansas. And we're excited to see what your name is.
All right, so I think our votes are in, and not my choice, but I'll go ahead and end the polling and share the results. It looks like your next calf will be Lucky, and it is lucky to be named by all of you. So I guess that's very fitting. On behalf of the Nutrients for Life Foundation, I would like to leave you with one last fact, and that there's approximately 1 billion people celebrating Earth Day today. And we would just like to say thank you for celebrating it with us. Have a great day.